This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places, between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Back with another episode of the Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell from the KC Soccer Journal. With me, Eric Bergrud from his luxurious, beautiful home, not at the KC Soccer Dome.
No, but what was awesome was when I was in Utica, I think it was during the All-Star Challenge, I absolutely made a world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome reference on air. So the world knows now, if they didn't already.
I think Budzinski needs to send me $1 every time that we mention it on the pod. What do you think?
So I was talking to him about this in Utica. We were having a post-game conversation. I said, my goal is for all these World Cup visitors in 2026, when they get to Kansas City, to go to the Dome. They're like, I want to go to the world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome and see what it's all about. That will be success.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would turn that into money for me somehow, somewhere down the line. But we'll see.
Figure it out.
All right. Speaking of the All-Star game, might as well just jump into that since you that's a good segue at the moment. You were there. You were calling the game. 6 Comets players there, 4 on one team, 2 on the other team. What was the impression? What was the event like?
It was like a homecoming, Thad. So we flew that Tuesday morning bright and early out of KCI, landed in Chicago, and then met up with Milwaukee players and St. Louis players. And it was like, even before we got to New York State, it was everybody reconnecting with each other. And once we got in the hotel in Utica, it was just faces around the league. It was a great experience. One of my highlights for sure had to be seeing Neto win the goalkeeper challenge.
Yep.
Let all the haters stew on that one. But no, it was great. It's a fun place to watch and call a game. Utica is, and they've done a couple interesting things this year. They've added LED dasher boards, so they're able to customize the ads, which is pretty cool. And then they changed their turf. It's not like what we see at Cable Dawn Marina where the turf is rolled out.
Yeah.
These are not squares, but rectangles that fit in with each other. And so you can swap out individual pieces, which is kind of cool because if you change a sponsor, you don't have to reprint your turf. You can just change out that section.
No, that is cool. That's I've been thinking, there has to be a better way to do some of that stuff. So it seems like they're doing that.
Kansas City was well represented, and after the game, was able to go down on the field. Did sign somebody's beer stein. That's another story for another day. But Leo Acosta had friends and family there who drove 11 hours from Chicago to be there, and it was a great experience seeing all of them on the field after the game. And so a great advertisement for the sport. And you talk to players around the league, Kansas City is well respected.
Cool. It's it's a good event. I'd love to see this every year. I don't know if that's the plan, but I'd love to see this every year. And, of course, a little better scheduling so every team doesn't have an excuse to like hold their players back or anything like that. Do you know if there's any plans on doing that in the future?
We'll see. I mean, I think the question is going to be who's going to want to step up, and you can imagine who might be the usual suspects wanting to have an all-star game, and we'll see. I think that obviously I'd love to see it in Kansas City. The fact that Kansas City hosted the previous one, albeit in COVID,
Right.
might create a challenge if you're thinking sequence, but I mean, it would be a fantastic event here if Kansas City were to get that opportunity.
Yeah, there's three or four cities that will be perennial want to host those type of events. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Kansas City being one of them, obviously.
sure.
All right. Have All-Star games sometimes are really fun, sometimes they're a little bit boring. How did you feel like the players put out to win this game?
I expected it, and I said that in the pregame there. Okay, there's going to be no defense, and people are just going to like tee off on the goalkeepers. That's not how it went out. I mean, immediately, Team Oliveira or Team Kelvin pressed, and so you could see, oh, wait a minute, they're taking this pretty seriously. Nobody, no, that's not fair. I was going to say nobody got kicked. Almost nobody got kicked during the game. So the goal was, let's get out of there without injury, and for the most part that happened. But both teams took it seriously, and I thought it was pretty competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. I just wanted to get your honest opinion before I threw anything out there. Uh, Not quite as physical as the Canada-US hockey game the other night, but it was.
Nobody dropped the gloves like a kickoff, so yeah, it wasn't quite the same. But then again, the NHL's had problems with their All-Star game, so they they went a different format this year, and it looks like it paid off. NBA continues to have problems with its All-Star game format. The NFL has problems with its All-Star game format. So, relatively speaking, well, and at MLS, while we're at it, Thad, this whole notion where you have to compete against an international team
Yeah.
means that half of your potential all stars from within your league don't get called up. And with MASL, two complete teams from within the league played against each other. That's a pretty good win.
Yeah, and I liked it was a draft. I mean, since it was a single table this year, you couldn't do an East versus West or North versus South or something. I think MLS and I think NHL did one year where they like did Americans versus other people, or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the MLS I think did U.S. born versus others that one year, and I know those were kind of fun too. But I do like an East West kind of scenario. But in this case, it was really good having the draft. So
sure. Well, you might recall MLS started with East West and they've
yep,
moved away from it. But I think it's great. The more people in the league, the more players you can give opportunities like this to showcase them, it's better for your league, in my opinion. And the players there all seem to enjoy their time and the opportunity given to them.
and just thought too is in some places when they do all-star games, they help will have other people represent the skills competitions. That so maybe the fastest player or the hardest shot, like in the NHL, they would have different people sometimes do it. It wasn't always the people who were in the All-Star game. So I think that'd just be another opportunity to get maybe another 6 or 8 people into those games.
I mean, it always comes down to budget and logistics,
Oh
and
yeah,
I think that it's difficult to do anything because of budget and logistics. And so a lot of people I heard from were hoping that the league would consider a weekend all-star date. Problem with that is you would have to adjust the schedule and have 12 teams or 11 teams be willing to let go of one of their weekends to
yep.
make that happen. It's a difficult ask, but potentially anything's possible with advance notice.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously there's one team that controls their dates pretty much. But I would like to see that. Again, I'm glad they had it. It's successful. Keep doing this, and they can just keep refining it, keep growing the league. All of those things, there's progress. It's mostly good, some not, but mostly good. So I'm happy with all that.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about the All-Star game?
No, other than Kansas City players put on a good show. Coach Stokich was a great representative for the franchise, and we'll see what is in the works for next season.
All right, so the last Comets game at home versus the Ambush, the fifth of five this season. So they're halfway through the season and they got their five out of the way. Uh, Start off really strong for the Comets. I'm sitting there. uh, there's some guys what I see at the beginning of the game. I'll like, so what's your prediction today? You know, just kind of joking around. And sometimes Alan Mayer, I'll run into him and he wants to pin me down to my prediction and stuff. And I'm thinking it's going to be a relatively close game through most of the game, and then maybe the end where you take advantage of some open net six attacker situations. So I originally said 7-4, 7-5. Guy standing next to me said 7-5, but and we both said it would kind of go late. But that like halfway through the first period, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be a blowout. I was wrong.
It's amazing how that works, where you think that everything's going in your direction, and then St. Louis adjusted coming out of the media timeout,
Yep.
and it took a long time for Kansas City to get that fourth goal. But in the end, the better team won, and some of the goals that Kansas City scored, Henry Ramirez's goal, that's a goal of the year candidate in and of itself. You have the goal on the other side later in the game where Rion fed the ball diagonally to Leo Acosta, who scored off the crossbar down.
Yep.
Just some great team effort there for Kansas City. And not only they deserved to win, they should have won that game.
I will say there was a non-goal called situation on the tunnel in from the locker room side. The ball hit the crossbar, came down, and went out. I think that one might have been a goal. It was not called a goal, so it would have
Was
been a
this the
goal.
one that was reviewed?
Yeah, can't remember if it was reviewed or not now, but no, it was. Yes, you're right. It was
Yeah,
the
this
one that
the
was
one was
reviewed.
reviewed. Yeah, what's interesting is I said on air, and I actually misspoke on air because I wondered why St. Louis hadn't challenged it. And the day after, I heard from a member of the St. Louis coaching staff who reminded me that's not a permissible coach's challenge. It's only can be a referee initiated review. And so
Yeah,
for me, there were two reviews that I didn't see being overturned. That was one because Drew Klemp was right there. So he would have had to see something clear that he didn't see
right.
the first time. But there was a goal in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you remember this, where Ramon Palmer started the counterattack, which led to the goal. St. Louis challenged because they thought that Ramon went high with his arm, but that was right in front of Elvis, the other referee, Osmanovic. Um, I just didn't see him overturning something that was 10 feet right in front of him. And so, I mean, for me, one of the interesting conversations next year or in the off season is going to be adjustments to video review. I heard from somebody during the game, well, that first one you mentioned, Dad, proves why you need goal judges. Well, you have to decide whether we're going to include goal judges, pay them, et cetera, et cetera. And so every idea comes with a cost,
It does.
and
And
video
human
review is not perfect.
and human error, even with a goal
Oh,
judge, it can
for
be.
sure.
Because like you said, Drew was there like pretty close to that play. I
Yep.
was probably the closest person to it other than the goalie, I'll be honest. But I am also at the worst possible angle to see it because
Sure.
I'm directly
Sure.
behind it.
Right.
So I know from doing photos and having been on the sidelines and in the end zones and stuff and on the touch lines, it's hard to see those angles unless you're in exactly the right angle.
Yep.
So it has to be the whole
No, I get that.
ball, has all those things. It's not just a part of it. It's all that factors into it. Me and the other guy standing there like looked at each other like, yeah, we thought that was a goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I was glad it wasn't, but
Well, I mean, we couldn't tell from our vantage
right.
point. The video reviews were inconclusive. the ball never touched the ground. This was the one that Nacho wound up clearing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so the ball never touched the ground, and so we never had a view of the ball. Normally on these reviews, you can see whether the ball hit the ground, and you see all space between the ball and the goal line. We never saw it, so
Yeah, even that's tricky because you have to have the right angle to tell that when you can see sometimes space, but the ball's not fully across the line.
yeah, yeah,
So anyway, I wasn't trying to say like anybody did a bad job. It was just like, oh yeah, I think
right.
that one was actually was a goal, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong too because I didn't have the best angle, but I was just really close.
Yeah, I
But
think that, and I might have said this on air too, is when things are going well for you, you catch the breaks. When things aren't going for well for you, you don't catch the breaks. And I think St. Louis is in this mode. They've had a couple games in a row now where they can point to a call or two and say, "Hey, if this had gone our way, perhaps the game might have gone in a totally different direction," but it didn't. So there you go.
good game though for several players. Just I just while you were talking, I was just pulling up the stats, the the leaderboard. Rian Marquez with 37 points, 18 assists, leads in both of those two categories.
Yeah,
Having a pretty good
here's
season.
what's going to be interesting. Thad, if you're thinking MVP race, Kelvin Oliveira is supposed to leave for, if not all, most of the month of March on Kings League duty.
Yep.
What are the voters going to do if Rion leads the league in scoring total points, but Kelvin is significantly ahead of him in points per game? That's a dilemma. Do you credit Kelvin for his excellence while he was there? Or do you reward Rion for playing 24 games and maxing out? And so I think we still have to consider him as an MVP candidate, regardless of what Kelvin does the next couple games.
Oh, you absolutely have to. Again, I can understand why people vote differently, based upon their whatever criteria they put on it. There's no official criteria, I think, for MVP, who's the most valuable player. To me, it's the person who is the most valuable player to that team, and that team has some success. It doesn't have to be the top team. It doesn't have to be the second place team. But I also don't think you can have a league MVP on a team that's, at the bottom of the table either. So,
Right, right.
so I think part of it might just be how Utica does, how Kelvin does the rest of these, how Rian does the rest of these. I think it's going to be a good, interesting argument at the end, though.
Yeah, well, and maybe a slight segue to Harrisburg. This weekend's going to be critical because if the matchups that are on the schedule this weekend, you mentioned Utica City, that they have two home games against Chihuahua. That this could be critical for either team.
Yep.
Baltimore Blast, two road games at Tacoma Stars, and apparently they stayed on the West Coast after their loss at Empire. They didn't fly back to the East Coast, so they've been in hotels all week. You've got the Milwaukee Wave at the San Diego Sockers. So there's a lot of shifting that potentially happens this week. Milwaukee at Sockers and then Strikers on Monday. That I think we'll have a better idea after Monday how the top 5 or 6 get recalibrated. And there's an opportunity here for the Comets if they don't overlook Harrisburg.
Yeah, they need to go and do business there. I mean, I expect them to do well. Do I know that they'll get all 6 points? No, but if they don't, they will be disappointed, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's an opportunity. If you look at the standings, Kansas City is within striking distance of both San Diego and Chihuahua, and actually was briefly in second place on Sunday. So Chihuahua has played 17 games; they have 40 points. Kansas City has played 13 games and they have 32 points. So you start seeing how these games coming up this weekend and then the following week become really critical because 4 games in hand, 8 points out of 12 gets you tied with the first place team.
Yep. And with San Diego, they're only a point behind, but they have 2 games in hand over San Diego.
Yep.
And it's, they can, I think they're well positioned right now to finish near the top of the table. Whether they do, that still is up to them, and they still have a lot of hard games left.
Yeah, it's a little early to say this, but it's almost at the point of saying that the Comets control their own destiny, almost. And it's been a long time since we've been able to say that.
They do control their own destiny because if they win out, they finish first.
Oh yeah, no, agreed,
But
agreed.
but that's still 11 more games. So
Yeah, that's why
from
it's a
right
little
now,
early to say that. And with Harrisburg went to Tacoma last weekend, lost 2, played better in the second game. They've been playing on the road without Dom Francis. I would expect Dom Francis to be there for both games this weekend. So uh, if the Comets were expecting to catch a break, it's not going to be there. But they have had great success against Harrisburg. Played there a couple seasons ago, I believe, and won there, if not last season. And so we had this conversation with Coach Stokich after that Dallas. You might recall this, that after that Dallas come from behind win, we we were on a Zoom conference with him, and asked the question about Harrisburg, and he's like, "We're not overlooking Harrisburg." Well, you're in the same boat right now with 2 games at Harrisburg. You cannot overlook them because this is a team that, in my opinion, is better at home and has the pieces to win if everything plays out the way they want.
I think this is often when you look at these situations, to me, there's a lot of teams that are not as good as their record shows, and there's a lot of teams that are better than their record shows. And I think Harrisburg is better than their record shows. They're not obviously they're not the class of the league at this moment. No insult to the Heat, so I apologize, but they are a better team than a what 2-10-1.
Yep.
Uh, Speaking of teams down at the bottom, though, congrats to the Texas Outlaws.
Oh my goodness, I did catch um, the end of the game, so I caught them from when they were up to when they gave up the win to when they won it in overtime, and I was having a sense of deja vu, that because it felt awful like the Kansas City game up in Milwaukee, where
Yep.
Kansas City was leading, and then in less than 10 seconds remaining in regulation, they got scored on. It's like, okay, this is happening again.
I admit I probably jinxed it because I was watching a lot of different things. I was just kind of going back and forth here and there. I was checking scores. I'd bring the game up and watch a little bit and then do something else. And at one point, it was a minute and a half left in the game, and they were up by 2. I'm like, "Come on, you're okay. You can see this out." And I went to watch something else. Looked back at the score. I went, "They're in overtime. What the hell?"
Well, and on MASL Monday this week, Eddie Piskarich blamed himself for not having the right players in that situation on the field, and kudos to him for taking responsibility. But you would like to believe, even on the road, you can close out a game,
Yep.
2 goals, 90 seconds. The Comets, it got a little dicey at the end of the game too, against St. Louis, but ultimately they closed it out, and ultimately Texas closed it out.
No, so good for them. Helped out Kansas City and some other teams down in that mix for stealing some points. All right. So what they're going to Harrisburg. It's 2 games. Like you mentioned, Francis will be there. What do the Comets need to do? Do you think are they taking some extra players so they can rest some guys for one game for the next game in case of injuries?
Well, far be it for me to guess what is going to do. I would not be surprised if they brought an extra player or 2 because of any potential injuries and just load management on players. We've seen a few guys out. Lucia Tetsane didn't play again on Sunday against St. Louis. That's a big question mark because they miss him on the back line. You saw some players step up. Henry Ramirez definitely comes to mind. Eric Pereira played a regular shift for most of the game, at least defensively.
He's been playing well.
Yeah, and even matchup against Taiyu. And by the way, Taiyu, no goals against Kansas City. So even with the changes in the lineup, they were effective defensively there. But yeah, with all the flu bugs going around, you have to be careful about somebody getting sick and being out with
Yep.
the potential on that surface, which tends to be bumpy. It would be not unheard of for somebody to go down on Saturday, and you've got to figure out what do we do on Sunday. So, I mean, I think they'll try to keep their options open, and the ultimate goal here is 6 points. It's not 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. It's six.
No, I was going to be really snarky when you mentioned Taiyu. I was going to say that, but he didn't get the benefit of the Comets putting goals in for him this time.
Well, I mean, that's indoor soccer. That's what we all signed up for. That.
Oh, I know. I'm just being a
Yeah.
smartass, man.
Yeah.
It's the ambush. I got to do that. All right. What else we need to talk about today, sir?
No, other than in addition to Kansas City's games, there's a lot happening starting Thursday and running through Monday. So definitely scoreboard watching will be the thing across the league this weekend because just too many points that can be earned and dropped. And in particular, I'd keep an eye out on those two games in Utica with Chihuahua there because Utica needs to max the points they have while Kelvin's around. And Chihuahua has two teams that are in his rear view mirror, meaning the Kansas City Comets and the San Diego Sockers. So
Yep.
they need to max the points on the road.
It's hard to believe that at the end of this weekend they will only have 5 games left.
That's true. And they had a home heavy beginning of the season, and now they're going to spend some quality time on the road. Harrisburg has spent a lot of time on the road, and they have, I guess that's worth mentioning. Before they even play the Comets, they have Thursday home against UCFC. So Harrisburg legs and UCFC legs are going to start get tired by Sunday, where you're looking at 3 games in 4 days.
Yep. These schedulers are not doing anybody favors this year, are they?
Well, arena availability,
Well, I know. It's
arena availability, and so Harrisburg has to think a little bit about their moving parts. UCFC has to get down to Harrisburg, and then, by the way, go home and host the two-time defending champion back to back. And so, it's it's not an understatement. This is a pivotal weekend.
it is. It's a really good weekend to be really cold outside, and you can sit home and watch some games on the computer or TV or
You can.
who's
That's
Uncle
why they
Lazo this
invented
weekend?
indoor soccer. It's
Right.
for February games.
Oh, another good going back to the Comets ambush game. A lot of former players and some staff members that were there in attendance.
Yeah, it was great to see Ty Keogh, who played for both those teams. If I had been focused more broadly on air, I would have mentioned that Ty Keogh also played in that first ever MISL game between the Cincinnati Kids and the New York Arrows. He was Keith Tozer's teammate on Cincinnati, and it didn't even dawn on me at the time. I thought about it after the fact, but he handed the trophy to the winning team of the series. Kim Rutfed popped up in the booth in the middle of the game, which was always an interesting experience. He came by to say hi, but a couple other players and staff came by to see Nick Vassos in the booth. That's always a treat when people show up. So that was a good time. And the autograph line was so long that I just looked at it and I'm like, I'm going home because there's
Yep.
no way I'm getting through all these people and getting onto the field.
Yeah, the people were wanting to get out there. It was a pretty good crowd. I stopped LeBaron Holloman and Nate Hauser and Chris Duke and a couple others to say hi because I've known them for a little bit now. Talk to them about different stuff. But it was another fun thing when we do those retro games. Good looking jersey, I liked it,
Yeah,
and it was a good time and 3 points, so all went well.
all went well for sure.
All right. Any last words besides watch a lot of games this weekend?
Watch a lot of games this weekend. Stay warm. Just remember, Kansas City was built for indoor soccer in February. So that's all
Yeah,
I have to say.
because if anybody doesn't know, we're in that do we go watch Sporting play Inter Miami and Messi when the kickoff of the game will be about 3 degrees. Real temperature, not wind chill. Wind chill will be -20 or something. They should not play these games.
I have yet to decide whether I'm going or not. So I'm hedging my bets.
Um, yeah, I'm probably going to go, but man, that's I don't like walking from the car into the arena, much less sitting outside to try to do photos and this type of stuff. Appreciate the time, Eric, and we will talk soon.
Sounds good.
We're out.